So much, and we're joined now by John Nienstedt. He's the CEO of Competitive Edge, and they do polling, among other things. And John, let's start out.
Sure.
Tell us, what is Competitive Edge? Exactly what do you guys do?
We're a survey research firm. We work across the country. We're a national firm. We've been working since 1987. Doing polling all across the country.
How did you get into this?
That's a long story.
You get that question a lot.
I do get
the short version.
Yeah, you don't meet a lot of pollsters. I worked for another firm back in the day. I actually worked for Susan Golding, if you remember her. She's a former mayor, but I worked for her when she was a county supervisor, showing my age there. And I love politics ever since I was a kid. I was kind of a strange kid in that way. But yeah, I got into it because math and the intersection of math and politics was always attractive to me.
Do you then follow the races and people come to you and say, we'd like to buy your results, or do people contract with you to get a number?
The latter,
okay.
But when you say get a number, that sounds a little bit pejorative.
No,
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I don't want to say that way, but to find out what the numbers are, I should say.
Yeah,
right?
and more importantly, find out why the numbers are the way they are. That's more important. Accuracy is one thing, but you want to understand why things are the way they are, because that's the way that you're able to deal with public opinion. I like to say understanding the why gets you to the how to change public opinion or work with it.
We just had a lot of different races going on. I imagine you were involved in the spectrum there. Is there anything that stood out for you in terms of following the numbers and things that maybe made a left turn that you didn't expect?
Well, there are no real big left turns. For instance, we predicted Mayor Faulconer was going to, Mayor Faulconer's pollster, by the way, was going to win in a landslide, which occurred. Now, I had him at 56%. He eventually got 58%. We were actually thinking he would get higher than that, because once you take the people who were undecided in those last few polls and attribute them or extrapolate them, I was figuring he'd come in with over 60.
And what was your process for determining that?
Well, you use a lot of math. We use regression analysis to understand what are the true drivers of that opinion.
Regression analysis?
Yeah, multiple regression analysis.
Okay. Now it's multiple regression analysis.
Yeah.
All right, what does that mean?
I tried to make it a little bit more simple. It's a statistical process that you use mathematically to understand what's driving public opinion. I talked about the drivers earlier of public opinion. So you use the statistical technique to find out what the main driver was, and so we use that to extrapolate where the undecideds would go if they felt like the rest of the electorate. Eventually, they're going to have to make a decision, right? So if something is driving their support, driving the electorate support, you model that for those undecided voters. In this case, we thought he would get over 60%. He's at 58. Now, there's still 40% of the ballots to be counted out there. And so things could change. He could move up, maybe move down, but it's clearly a landslide no matter how you slice it. You
know, in the media, heading up to an election, we are quoting polls all the time and talking about where things stand. It's just the fodder of elections. Now, you may, of course, have a biased opinion because you're at the top of this industry. But does that hurt or help the election ultimately in terms of, does it drive people to the polls, or does sometimes people...
They've never determined that. There's been, the thought that it suppresses voter turnout. Well, there's a lot of things going on that have suppressed voter turnout over the years, and none of it's really related to polling. Voters cast a conscientious ballot. They don't look to polls to then decide how to vote. I mean, that's pretty rare to see that. So I don't think that polling influences things in that way. The public polls, I don't think that you report, are not influencing public opinion.
Well, if that's the case, then why are the candidates so obsessed with finding out what the numbers are and wanting to know where they stand? If it doesn't affect anything to know ultimately, I mean, I guess I'll let you answer that question.
Sure. Well, I think two things. First of all, their feelings are misplaced. That obsession is misplaced in those numbers, if that's all they're caring about. What they should be worried about is why those numbers are the way they are. That's one thing. But the second thing I will say is what it does influence is donors. So you see a poll that shows Kevin Faulconer way up. Has no race, is going to win no matter what, well, then that would affect his ability to raise campaign funds. That's where the polls really do matter. I mean, you will see that quite a bit. Contributors want to see that the race is winnable, or it's not completely so winnable that there's no reason to give to donate money to a campaign. So, and work and volunteers and those sorts of things do look at those polling numbers. But as far as a poll driving public opinion, I don't think it happens all that often.
Thank you for talking about the philosophy of the whole thing and spending some time on that. It was
Absolutely.
yeah, very curious to me. I hope we get a chance to talk again. John Nienstedt, CEO of Competitive Edge. Thank you, sir.
Thank you
Pleasure
very
to
much.
have your time.